Coming up, we have John Lineweaver talking about what it takes to transition from the military, law enforcement, emergency services, and federal jobs into the corporate security world. Sit back, relax, enjoy Mr. John Lineweaver talk to you and let you know how to take the steps necessary to make it happen. John Lineweaver from Facebook, coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, it is yours truly once again, the corporate security translator and the author of So You Want to Get Into Corporate Security, hanging out with my main man, John Lineweaver today. This guy, I'm telling you, he's got the background and everything that you could possibly want in the life of a corporate security professional. He's out here. He's going to share this stuff with us today. Man, I am pumped. Big time, John, in the house. Here we go. I'm going to clap you in on this one. Oh, look at that. John, what's up, man?
Good. How are you doing today, Carlos?
You know, hanging out. I am so happy that you're here with me today, man. I am a big fan of yours. I get a chance to work with you, which is awesome. Literally by far, and I'm going to put this out there to the world, one of the best guys I have ever worked with in my entire career. You, my friend, you're it. You made it happen. So one more time for that. Hold on. Give me good claps for you, buddy. How's everything, man?
Everything's great. No, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be out here, and the feeling's mutual. Just love working together, and I learn stuff all the time from you. So glad to be here and honored.
You're so kind. You're so kind, and not only good looking, but kind, man. That's very nice of you. Thank you very much. I'll make sure I put that $100 bill there in your wife's pocket next time I see her, man, out in Atlanta. So, hey, man, thank you for being on the show, and I'd just like to kick it right off. There's a lot of stuff for us to talk about, so why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Name's John Lineweaver. I've got just a little bit shy of 30 years in the industry. I started out when I was working in the military. I did the embassy duty with the Marine Corps, military police. Then when I left, it was just a natural evolution to get into the private security sector. Worked in manufacturing, high-rise, hospitality, later into the utility, critical infrastructure, and now in big tech with you. In fact, we share the same start date and orientation date, and that's it. We started this journey together. So,
man, we do. We've been holding hands since day one. Man. You are my main man, man. I'm so excited to have you here. I don't even know, I'm actually underneath the table here, man. I'm doing little footsie shuffles, man. I'm so excited. But hey, so you got that background as a Marine, and thank you, by the way, the other day for reminding me that a Marine is not a soldier, right? A Marine is a Marine. And Air Force Airman, right? Is that how you gave me the breakdown? What was the breakdown on that?
Well, so Marines, we're a little fanatical. Some have accused us of being that, but Marines are Marines, sailors are sailors, right. Soldiers are soldiers, Coast Guards are Coast Guardmen, they're Coast Guardmen, and then of course our National Guards are also soldiers. Now, it's just a unique name that the Marines have, and they're very proud of it. So it stings a little when we get referred to a soldier, much like if you call a soldier an airman, it would, so.
No, I appreciated you helping me out with that, man. I'm just a little lonely cop, man. I don't know those kinds of things. We just, anyways, we're known as pigs. There you go. That's no, man. Hey, it is what it is, man. It is
not in my world.
You're a gentleman. You're a gentleman. So let's kick this off right, man. There was a transition for you when you were coming out of the military and you were trying to figure out life and what you were going to do with it from there. And it kind of landed you in the corporate security world from the beginning. Why don't you tell a little bit about the folks, a little bit of maybe your heartaches, some of the stuff that you went through, and some of the things that the folks transitioning from the military, law enforcement, emergency services, and the federal careers might want to keep an eye out, man, and look into, as they're doing that transition.
Well, one of the key differences was transitioning from the military is, the military and the Marine Corps of the 90s, 80s and 90s when I served was we had two types, authoritative and persuasive, right?
Right.
We asked you nicely, or we gave you the carrot, or we gave you the stick,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you really had to learn how, when to use both, right? And as time evolved and the workforce evolved, you learn that you get lots more with the carrot than the stick.
Right.
And so, but you have to adapt to that, right? And so really learning how to adapt to those different occasions. Now, you still have to be authoritative in certain circumstances, as with your background in critical events and crisis management.
Right.
And sometimes you just got to say, "Hey, Carlos, feelings aside, go get me this, right?
Right.
Get it done."
The old knife hand, man. Did you see the knife hand? I threw the knife hand in there.
Yeah, I saw that.
Go ahead.
You've been practicing. You and Big Al. Al's been giving you some pointers.
Yep.
So I think that was one of the early on things, was the leadership styles. And it's different, when you're trying to adapt those to a, civilian sector, private security. Accountability was another one.
Right.
In the military, you're accountable for everything. And, we laughed at, a young private or corporal is in charge of a, I don't know, X $1 million tank, right?
Right.
He gets out and he's like, "Yep, here's your clipboard and your G-Tex watch," right? And, and so, the level of responsibility, sometimes, you have to kind of mirror that to the accountability, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. The accountability piece too is a strange one, because I've talked to people about their resumes before, and the book I'm writing kind of covers that. But anyways, it talks about sometimes I'll get resumes and they say, well, I led the 125th infantry battalion, and that's what it says on the resume. And a lot of times I go, man, you led equipment, you led big budgets, you led people, there's a bunch of things, and they forget to put those things. So accountability is definitely something that sometimes I think the military folks miss from inserting into their resume in a way that me in the corporate world can really read it. So accountability is a good point. Is that the accountability piece that you're talking about? Does that really break down on? Do you see more project management kind of stuff, or is it accountability to your team, or is it accountability to just your company? How is that to you? How did that feel to you when you were transitioning?
Hey, let me back up one, because you hit the nail on the head, right? One of the biggest things is getting your resume in order, and so we've talked about that tremendously on things, and how we've had to decipher resumes.
Yeah,
and it applies to military and law enforcement, right?
Oh yeah.
Long range shooting. Well, that's cool if you're in the military, but it's not really applicable in corporate security unless you're in a specialized field, right?
Right.
So when that, I do recommend that, and excited to see that book coming out. But back to the next one was the accountability. And so it's different with projects, right? So and the project management things, different leaders have different levels of information that they need, right?
Right.
And so you'll learn quickly to ascertain what's important to those different leaders, and then get them that information, right? So you have to adapt to that.
Right.
And it's culture, right? Different organizations have different culture. Tech is tech. There's nothing like it I've worked for in the world.
Right.
Hospitality is, what can I do for you, sir, ma'am? How do I, make you entertained?
Yeah.
And, if you look at the critical infrastructure, that's the closest thing to the government, and, more of the rigid, lifestyle. But yeah, it's unique.
I always thought that a good transition for us, especially folks in the data center world, would be like somebody that spent some time in the military, and then maybe they went to work for like Department of Energy or something like that, because they're dealing with those kinds of powers. What do you think about that?
I think
and I'm wrong often, by the way. It's totally okay. My wife will tell you that I'm wrong quite often. So you go ahead.
That's all right. You're the king at work, and that's all that matters. So
thank you.
So, I think one of the biggest things is, if if that's your field, right, and you want that high pace, high speed thing, and you're going to go into the DOE, that's great. But I'd also encourage people to look at other industries. So, for example, I learned tremendous amounts of skills working in the hospitality industry, right?
Oh yeah.
Because the mentality of our general manager at the time was, you're getting paid to entertain somebody in your house, right?
Right. Right.
If you don't like that, you're in the wrong field, right? And you and I've talked about that, right? It's all hands on deck for a flip or a change. If
Yep.
there's a piece of paper on the floor, you pick it up.
That's right.
You walk the guest down the place, right? All those things make you a better security professional, right? It teaches you empathy, how to deal with people, and find common ground. So I would say that if your field is high speed, danger, and you want that rigid, thing like that, absolutely go right into the DOE. That's some great things. Nuclear security is fantastic field, right? We have a coworker from that field, and but if you want to get into the corporate side, the hospitality, and it gives you a lot of the persuasive thing, gives you a chance to hone those soft skills.
Man, what a great point, John. I think that should almost be like the transition. If you're gonna get out of the military or something like that, your first stop should be a quick little stop, at hospitality security. Because you get to learn really that soft touch, man, how to deal with people in a different way, and it gives you a different perspective, I think, than a lot of the other fields, because you're dealing with the humanity, you're dealing with people and their needs and their issues, and you and I probably can go back and forth on a lot of funny, great stories with what humans will do. But you're right, man. So the hospitality thing is possibly a good opportunity for people to just learn. So
Yeah, no, my tip on that one is just go into the convention hotel business, not the resorts, right? So convention, you're there, you got them during the weekdays, and you get a little bit of rest on the weekends. Resort hotels, baby, you're working your tails off all day, every day.
You're working all day, man, all day. No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. A lot of interesting stuff too that I get from folks, John, when they're talking about, I want to do this transition. They ask me, what's the biggest thing? And one of the things that I tell them is that you have to figure out the culture, and you kind of hit the culture in a way to where the hospitality security business is one style of culture. And then if you go to a nuclear style business afterwards, then that's a whole other style of culture. I think it's extremely important for people to do the background of where do you want to work, and start figuring out what the company is about. Call some people, reach out to some people that are in that company, and they usually tell you the truth about it. How do you feel about that, man? Figuring out the culture of where you want to transition to.
That's a great point, right? And one thing I learned when I was in the military is you can be happy in the most miserable place in the world, or you can be miserable in paradise, right?
Yeah.
So, I was in the third worst country on the Department of State's list, right? It was just terrible, right? And then the next post was Paris, France, right? It was one of the best places. Yeah. Yeah. And but it's a mindset, right? So, so I think that's, you hit the nail on the head. You have to pick an organization. If you want a rigid lifestyle, tech is not for you, right? You can't be rigid in this industry. Now, that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice principles, right? And standards, right? But you just can't be rigid. You have to find ways of working through things. The utility industry, a little bit more rigid, so you have to look at your personality, because in the end of the day, your happiness determines your success level, right? And if you're happy doing what you're doing, it's not really work. It's fun. Like, hospitality was the most fun job I've ever had in my life, right? You get paid to make people happy, right?
Yeah.
So,
but you worked though.
Yeah.
We worked. You were 12, 14-hour days sometimes, man. I mean, 16 hours pulling doubles is not, it's pretty normal, man.
Yeah, in a suit and tie.
Yeah, you work. So yeah, if you're gonna get into those fields, man, get ready to work, because it's a heck of a lot of fun. Get ready to be on your feet a lot. Make sure you have comfortable shoes. You might be changing them every 3 months or so because you need new shoes because you walk so much. But yeah, I'll tell you about the culture thing too. And I've seen where a lot of folks transitioning fail is exactly that. They went into the wrong culture. And they get in there and they just can't translate that. They can't find a happy middle ground of this rigidity that you're talking about, or what I call kicking down doors and guns kind of mentality to very customer service based mentality, which is the opposite way, and where ranks don't really matter. You can't just tell your team you're gonna do this. It's an order. That would absolutely never work. I don't know about your team. I know that my team it'll never work, man. I got some great folks. So yeah, what do you think, man?
Absolutely. And one thing that I could take away from this is I had to change the way that I interacted with my team, right? And I had to modify it for each person, right? Because each one of them were different.
Right.
And so that was the ultimate goal. And once we figured out our comms strategy and then the productivity like leaped up, right? It just, it multiplied it because they were happier. We were communicating better. And then, we changed the level of delegation too, right? So in the beginning, they weren't as efficient, in some key areas that we've had a little bit more experience in, and we had to develop them, right?
Yeah.
But as we developed them, we empowered them, right? And now it's there. They own that task, right? We still have the responsibility, but they own the task. And so I think from that, the empowerment piece is really important, finding the way that they each communicate and the book, The Love Languages, right? So, but it's true to us, an extent, right? Everybody has a preferred language of how they want you to speak to them. You and I have a really unique thing where we can yell and scream at each other the next second, man. It's like, hey, did you try this rum?
Yes.
I mean, oh my God, look what I roasted this weekend on the barbecue.
Yeah.
And so, you've got to be able to know your audience, right? So I think that's a very important thing, the culture.
I'm going to tell you something that after I spent a couple of years of comp and I came back into the corporate world, I had this feeling, and I don't know if it's the same or was the same for you. I had this feeling, and I honestly did, that what I said went. What I said was correct, and I was right. And I know what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying that all cops have this feeling. I personally did, where it took me actually a little bit for me to kind of get back into the customer service based stuff. But I honestly, in the beginning, I struggled with that a little bit. And thank God that I've had the background already in that customer service based community, the hospitality world. It allowed me to go back in there. Did you ever, when you were transitioning, I'm talking about like my heart rate would go up. Like somebody would say something that I didn't agree with. And the only reason I'm saying this is because you and I disagree quite often at work, along with the rest of the team members. But I no longer feel that way. For me, it's like, all right, man, look, I win some, I lose some, and let's go have a drink, like you said. And I'm perfectly fine with that, right? But I don't know. Have you ever had that when you were transitioning?
Oh yeah, that was tough in the beginning, right? Because you're used to it, right? And military is quasi, or law enforcement is quasi-military too. And the biggest thing that you've got to look at on that is the details of how is it important for you to get through to that person, right? And you're right, not to personalize it, right?
Yeah.
It can't be a personal rejection, right? And so you got to put that aside. And I can tell you, frankly, I'm much better at people management now than I was, 20 years ago. Right. I wish I could go back and kick my, my 30-year-old self in the ass. Right.
Yeah.
And say, hey, you could have delivered that message a little differently. Same message, right? Just a little bit, and it's true. We learn from failures, right? And And I give you another one, right? I had one of my past, I'm not going to tell you what years it was because that'll identify people I don't want to, upset. But I had a very coarse manager, right? That I worked for, and I allowed that person to affect me personally, right?
Ooh.
And it just wore me down and grind me. And, it was my choice. It was that person's leadership style, right? And I had a choice to let it bother me and not, and I did, right?
Yeah.
And so, so it goes both ways, right? So it's how you interact with people, but it's also how you let people interact with you, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like change 20. It's like, we're good. All right. We're good. We're still in our box. We're still moving forward. We still got our goals. We got to change directions again. We got to change directions.
Yeah. There is definitely a style of leadership that I tell folks from the military that they have. One of the things I think the military comes with, and law enforcement, federal folks, emergency services folks, firemen and stuff, I think they have the leadership for the most part. We all have had leaders that, even in those fields, that were a little off. There used to be a joke where I used to work, Seminole County Sheriff's Office, that you're either going to get a good squad or a good sarge, right? You're going to pick one or the other. And sometimes you had both. Both were great. But one of the things that I always say about the military folks and all the folks that I usually mention are that they come with great leadership, but how do you translate that great leadership process? How do you translate that into the corporate security world? Sometimes that's the big differentiator for leaders. If you're coming in as a leader to a corporation, how do you do that? I think it's key, man.
Yeah, my success is the empowerment piece, right?
Yeah.
And I tell you, I look back at when I started at the hotel, right? And this is kind of telling. I learned a lot working in that industry. The day one, I asked the HR director, who was a good friend of mine, Al Linares, right? Al's now like a regional HR director. He said, Al, how many of these security officers are you going to keep? He goes, maybe one. That's like, like 34 officers.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man. I said,
why was that?
Yeah, thanks for letting me quit my job, coming to work for you, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, guess how many we retained? Let's take one guess. Out of 34.
Out of 34. I'm going to go with 4.
32. We retained 32 officers.
Right? Why?
Well, that's what it was. Is we first of all, we changed the perception of how management viewed them.
Yeah.
We changed and then we helped shape the perception that they had, right? And we addressed those perceptions because that was their realities, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they had a couple of really bad leaders in the past who didn't look out for them, didn't take care of them.
Right.
And that's what their perception of security leadership is the old, I will beat this into you and you'll do what I say exactly how I say it. Then we empowered them, right? We taught them how to use. At the time, they were 386 computers. Remember those? And we got a Pentium 1. Remember those? Those were with the turbo button.
Oh, yeah.
And then we taught them to use complex things like video multiplexers, IRAMs. Remember the old PPM 2000, the IRAMs, right?
I always tell people, if you've never worked on an overnight trying to put up cameras, man, before people came into your shop or your area or anything like that, you've never done security systems, man, Yeah. But all that old stuff, when you connected back to actually a VCR and you had to slow down a VCR to record just so you could get through the night with one tape. Anyways, yeah, dude, go ahead. Continue. Sorry.
But that's what we did, right? We empowered them, right?
Yeah.
We made them accountable.
Yep.
We gave them the tools. We gave them a new uniform, some things like that. We made them feel good about themselves. Yep. The other thing we did too is we hired a lot of women in the industry, right? We added a lot of women into it for key positions and roles, gave them some opportunities that weren't there before because, at the time, I'll tell you hire a single mother with a child.
Yep.
You give her a great schedule to work. They will work their tail off for you, right?
Absolutely.
Guys, they'll get that check in their pocket and they'll go out on the weekend and maybe we don't come in the next day, right? But, and that's what Now it's changed, right? That dynamic's changed considerably. Men become more responsible nowadays, right?
Yeah.
But hiring a key thing, like that was a big deal, is hiring for personality and then teaching, right? And then teaching. So it was a big win. I mean, at the end of the day, it was a lot more people that we had, than we thought we were going to have. So that was a success.
That's pretty cool, man. I'm actually reading a book right now. I think it's called Winning. First of all, I don't read. Let's get that out of the way. It's on Audible. I am listening to a book right now, and it's like Winning Starts in the Locker Room or something like that, and it talks about the leadership style, a couple of NFL teams and coaches and how they were able to change the teams around, and it started in the locker room, and going back to the culture stuff, one of them was the C, but a lot of it had to do with the coaching piece. How do you present yourself as a leader? How do you move along as a leader? How do you walk? How do you talk as a leader? How do you stay positive as a leader? That creates a positive movement throughout your entire, and then there's a bunch of studies that says if you're a positive person, your team becomes positive, and in the long run they become better performing teams and all this other things. So I think that's what it is. It's bringing that positiveness, making people feel good once again, kind of gets that. When you're interviewing folks and they're from the military or something like that, law enforcement, I tend to look for cues of niceties. I tend to look for cues of just a normal speaking person. I maybe it's me. I'm a little biased, but when I'm sitting around and I'm talking to somebody, I don't want them to cop talk me. I don't want them to act in a way. I want them to be very relaxed. I want it, like if you and I are buddies and we're talking, we're having a good old time. How do you feel? How do you feel about that? Is there anything on that interview process that you kind of, oh man, this person might be too rigid?
Oh, absolutely. So, but backing up 1 second too is, you live that positive energy, right? You bring it every day. I've known you now for almost 3 years, right? And even through your ankle issue and all that, there wasn't a day that you weren't positive. Maybe a day where you were like, an 8 out of a 10, right? And that's
I didn't have my coffee in the morning. Sometimes,
I know. I know you need that little sugar. You got to get that.
That's right.
Those little probiotics. I know you're missing those, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. God, I miss those.
Yeah. So, but the interview, right? Yeah. If don't be in an interview stance, right? You're not interrogating the interviewer, right?
At ease, soldier.
And I had a guy tell me one time, way back when I was working in the guard force business, and we had to run in the NNPI, thing, and we had this great cop come in, and he failed it, right? And I'm like, this guy's a 30-year cop. He retired. It came highly recommended. Like the guy says, cops are horrible at this personality disorder because they blow it every time. And I said, well, why is that? He says, well, they're very rigid, right? Everything is this way, right? Do most people steal? And it's like, they're like, well, most people I've interacted with do.
Yes, everybody's a thief.
Yeah. So what I found was I had to start coaching them. I'm like, look, okay, you need to kind of like, soften your view on the world, right? And come back towards the center, right?
Yes.
And so, if they're very rigid in the interview and you can't get them to relax a little bit,
right,
for conversation, they're going to struggle a little bit, right? And that's why I tell people, right, is to practice. Practice, with friends, practice with family. A great. I'll never forget. Do you remember the read technique? I know that's not the chosen one anymore, right?
You're talking about for interviewing? Actually, I'm going to call it corporate interrogations, but you cannot use the word interrogation. It is a corporate interview. Absolutely, sir. I'm a Wicklander Zulowski guy, so I get you. I
came home from that class, right? And I started on that. My wife's like, are you doing that interview nimbo jimbo whatever shit? I said, don't. She tells me, don't you ever do that to me again.
That's right. That's right.
So field interview, okay.
Yeah.
Not good in a personal setting.
Man, I'm with you. But listen, we're coming out on short, man. I knew we were going to do this because you and I could probably talk forever, man. And the folks are lucky we don't have a drink in our hands right now. We'd literally be talking forever. But We got to leave some folks with just a one or two, man, little tidbits, man, that if they're transitioning from the military, law enforcement, emergency services, or the federal gigs, a couple things for them to keep an eye out for, watch out for, and just throw them a couple ones out there, man.
What do I got? 2 minutes?
Yeah, I'll give you 2.
All right. Relationships, okay?
Yep.
Relationships are key, right? Most of the times you get referred into something, build your network, right? But don't just build a nonsense network. Build something of value with common interest and shared things. When you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, tell them what you're asking. Don't just send the blind invite to connect. That just tells me you just want into my network, right? Yeah. Tell me what you want, right? I want to help you. I see we have a common interest. Tailor your resume to the role. The analytics and the sorters, if you want to get in, tailor your resume to them. Take those classes and do that. Don't take rejection personally, right? They're rejecting your resume. They're not rejecting you, right?
That's right.
And then the other thing is, we touched it earlier, was remember the things that brought you joy in the military or law enforcement, right? Look for that in the security industry. And when you find those same types of roles, you're going to have joy again, and you're going to enjoy. It's not going to be work.
Absolutely, man. Well, big time, John Lineweaver. Sir, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and giving back to all those folks that are transitioning from the military, law enforcement, emergency services, and the federal careers. You are the man, my friend, and I appreciate you. Thank you for coming out and hanging out with us.
You're so welcome. And remember this, put me in, coach.
Hey, put me in, coach. That's a big thing, right? Somebody asks for some help, man, you get in there and help them out. It'll benefit you in the future. So thank you, John. Everybody out there in the land, once again, the corporate security translator out here and the author of So You Want to Get Into Corporate Security, hanging out with my good friend, John Lineweaver. Pay attention to this guy, man. We covered a lot of things from, and I took some notes here, man. Accountability, deciphering resumes, individual approach to leadership, learning from values, not being so rigid in your interview process. We covered so much that's crazy. So once again, good to see everybody out there, and we'll check you out next time. Take care. Bye.